Hello, internet friends, and welcome to episode number 100, to episode number 189 of Final Boss TV. Today, my name is Adam K.A.K. Bay. As it normally is, today is the Feral Druid show, and there's definitely going to be a few memes. I had to get them vetted and prepped, and one of them was actually updated before the show started, so more on that soon, of course. We'll have plenty to go over. There will be a little bit of a break next week, potentially. I'll let you guys know. We do have Shadow Priest and Restoration Druid, like, waiting in the wings for the next couple of shows coming up. But new PC build is coming up. Huge upgrades, going to that 2 PC build setup. Have to restructure or rebuild the whole show, audio, all those other crazy balance and stuff like that. And why that is even really possible is because of my friends over at Corsair. The show has been sponsored and partnered with Corsair, so if you want to help support the show, the stream, and everything in between with some bits and pieces and whatever else you need, go check out the links down below or on the YouTube video description box. I have been ordering so many things recently, and if you want to do the same thing and grab some physical bits and pieces for your computer and support what I do here, then that would be awesome. But if you want more of the show as well, I gotta make sure I give a big shout out to the special nerds and ladies that are supporting the show directly. Those are my patrons over on the show's Patreon page. Without them, Final Boss TV would be a far smaller production overall. But like I said, there are more podcasts. There are BTS notes. You can see how the show is put together. If you want to help contribute questions and things for the show, you can go check all that out on the show's Patreon page as well. And the huge Mythic Jaina fully illustrated wallpaper by Tutron, that's up there for patrons also. And I'm sure there'll be some nonsense in the show today, but we might save some stuff for the after show. But returning to the show today, we do have some familiar names. Guilty, welcome back, sir. Hello.
Hey, hey, hey.
Are you, is this a Game of Thrones show, actually? Or is this Feral? This is a Balanced Druid show.
Please don't mention that spec to me. That spec is just my mortal enemy.
Wait, balance is?
Balance just ruins me. I'm telling you, man. Keep that spec out of my mentions.
The fresh meat of the show today, Hippo. Welcome. Hello.
Hello.
Now, what are you?
Hi.
You're here to talk about Frost Death Knight. Is that correct?
No, none of that. Oh. That character's gone. That was an Udyr only thing.
Oh. But okay.
But
I've been lied to.
Talk about balance as well.
But then continue to be elusive. There is Zan, still off camera, but chasing a bucktooth beaver in game. Is that is that accurate?
Yeah, you know, they're really hard to get, so, you know. Still waiting for energy here, right?
I did have to bring up, this is before the show started, that I had to look through my art and prep things, and I said, Zan, are you in the same Fangs of Ashmain transmog as you were when you were on the Legion show? So just no variation for me. But you don't even wear that in the game right now.
Wow.
So... Oh.
Yeah.
That's 100 subs.
Can we get some at Gorek in chat, please? Just he's doing this. He's doing this on purpose.
Everyone's sub now. Big Pog.
Big Pog. Well, maybe. Whoever didn't get gifted a sub right now in chat. If you're not here for the live show, then you're missing this. But
I didn't get gifted a sub. This is a scam.
Oh, you didn't?
No, I didn't.
That's a scam.
Ripped off, dude. Ripped off.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh, what's up,
likes
Tettles?
Blue cat.
Tettles. That's a good friend of mine.
I like how you even like.
We love Tettles, man.
You gave me a compliment at the beginning of the show. You have a really good, gray mane pup emote. You didn't get.
Oh hey.
Wait, it's still going.
Oh, it is still going.
It's still going because it kind of breaks Twitch chat. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh boy.
Oh, they're asking me. Oh, I did get it. I got a sub this time.
Oh no.
Can post the final pup.
There we go.
Mission complete.
Good
Man.
gracious. Got a sub pog. That's the way to start the show. I was gonna go back to Zan because we have some people that may not know and haven't watched the Legion shows. So what do you dabble in the World of Warcraft? How long have you been part of said dabbling, and how long have you been playing Feral Druid? And are you cheating on the class with filthy balance druids?
No, I don't play balance. Not if I can avoid it.
As long as we don't look at your logs for... What was the boss?
Don't look at my logs. No, but I'm mostly a melee player, so if I'm cheating on something, it would probably more likely be in a rogue or something than with balance, to be honest.
Okay. But then how long have you been playing Feral Druid then?
As my main, probably since like Myth Warlords. Yeah, Mist. I did play End of Mist for sure.
Okay.
But I played a bit in Rough and stuff as well, but not really as my main.
Hippo, same question to you then, sir, because you're the fresh meat here. Who the heck are you?
I don't actually do anything like guide writing or anything. I just play Feral Druid. But I've been playing Feral. First class was a Druid. I didn't actually realize what a spec was. I started playing in Kata. Real noob then. But basically Kata. I've main Druid ever since. Played Feral as much as possible. Sometimes my guild makes me play other specs. That's just unlucky. You can't do anything about that. You know? Not even getting a good world rank, forcing me to play balance. What's the point? You know?
Ouch. Well, because this was Hippo, to be clear, was a suggestion by Guilty, because Guilty helped me put the show together back in the day, and he talked to me again, he helped me put together. So he was like, we should bring this guy on as well. So if anything happens on the show, it's Hippo's fault.
If he does anything wrong, it's my fault.
Oh,
it's your fault.
It feels bad, man.
I guess my claim to fame is that I'm the only Feral Druid in the world to participate in the MDI.
Oh.
I did that. Didn't do very
Asking about
well.
Arcways
Almost
sometime.
at all. Did horrible, honestly. But I was there, okay? That's all that matters.
Can we get some feels bad man in chat for Hippo, please? Or some Fs, either one.
I'm lucky.
Yeah, the 43. Big 43.
Yeah, 43. Died 43 times in Arcway in front of like 20,000 people.
Oh.
Whew. Let me tell you, that was a rough
goddamn
day.
tragedy.
It was like, it was the highest high because we reverse switched someone in the first round. And I got to play Feral all 3 matches, and then they made me play balance for Arcway and Halls of Valor, and we lost both of them. It's just...
But hey!
Serves you right, you goddamn traitor.
Wow.
Okay.
You tried, all right? You tried to bring it.
Yeah.
But is it your fault you died that many times, or is it...
Oh, no, it's, I could talk about this for
No, you
hours.
can't blame your boy Centurions.
Yeah, there was a warrior in the group. He said that Perry was on the GCD, so he couldn't press it. That's false, by the way. Perry's never been on the GCD. And he died, and his Ravager got wasted. Everything, it was doomed. It was doomed, okay? At that point, we asked them if we could just go to the next dungeon, and they made us play through the rest of the Arcway just with 43 deaths. It was really humiliating, honestly. But it was fun enough. That's all that matters.
Well, Guilty, how about you, sir? Because I think you have a little. You can throw some accolades out there, little shout outs. You've got a. Oh, you took your jacket off.
Yeah, I did. It's hotter than the surface of the sun in my room, so I can't wear the jacket. Tried to wear my jacket.
Well, you don't have to. Okay.
So shout out to Wowhead. Yeah, I write feral guides for them.
Wow.
Big Pog, Ketsuki's in the chat. We all love Ketsuki, but it's hotter than the surface of the sun in my room, so I can't wear the jacket. So yeah. There's the guide.
There is the guide. How long have you been curating this?
I started writing it mid last expansion when the previous guy Tinderhoof he had a kid.
Yeah.
And he decided to step down, so I took over then. Yeah, the kid ethics is real unfortunate. Apparently the kid's pretty cute, so what can you do?
And then how long have you been playing Feral then?
Boy, I'm complicated. I started playing it in like vanilla, but then I lived in America, so I started playing it properly in like MOP, like halfway through MOP. So Throne of Thunder, Siege of Orgrimmar, the Glory Days.
The Glory Days, Throne of Thunder, take me back.
I thought, hold on.
And now I'm the GM of a guild on EU, so shout out to whatever.
Now, you're talking about Glory Days as a good segue here. I thought the glory days were 2009. I have a thread here that I can bring up real quick. This thread is called Alamo Teaches You to Play Druid.
Look, honestly, if Alamo wants the Wowhead guide, just hit me up on Discord because that thing was a work of art.
I'm just curious because this coincides with this flowchart, and I want to make sure you're talking about simplified cat ray DPS flowchart. It's pretty easy to play cat, right? So
no, yeah, that's true. Honestly, for the most part, that shit still applies now. Like, if you follow that, you're probably gonna do like okay.
You'll do good enough, passable.
You won't int, which is not inting.
Now, just to double check here, this major section, the John effing Madden section, you had to give me an updated version of this for BFA.
Yeah.
And that looks,
we took an ability out there.
That looks like this. Okay.
Yeah. Accurate.
Okay, so to explain this, Savage Roar, that talent doesn't exist anymore. It's just gone. It might look like it's on your talent tree, but it isn't there anymore.
Yeah, it's really bad.
So we've also added in Shadow Meld there, because if you're not a Night Elf, you're probably trolling.
What do you mean?
Like,
I mean, literally,
Night Elf is so good, man. Like, just be Night Elf. Just be Alliance and be Night Elf, because it's like a 2% DPS increase, and we quite like 2% DPS.
Chat brings up, why are there other buttons that isn't bite? That flowchart is incorrect.
Okay, see, the problem is that you need to press other buttons to let you press bite. Like, you want to only press bite, but bite has, like, requirements. It's really weird. But you want to press other buttons that aren't bites.
I feel like just press your paw on the keyboard and then you press. It's all good.
Oh.
Yeah. Just hit a button somewhere, like have shred, rake, thrash on like 1, 2, 3, and just hit one of those, and then press 4, which is Ferocious Bite.
Press 4. I think that's actually my bite button as well.
Mine is P. So.
What?
Did you say P? I don't even want to know. Your bindings are garbage trash. That's all I'm gonna say.
Oh no, are you one of those IJKL keyboard users?
No. Like, I've got enormous hands, right? So I can press P pretty easily, but P is actually on my mouse.
It's just because you have enormous hands.
I have really big hands.
Okay.
He's like 9 feet tall. He's a giraffe in real life.
You have to put it. Hold on, we have to test this. Put your hand against your face. Guilty. There you go.
Okay, but right.
All right. Yeah, let's. Oh,
we're getting it.
Noise. We're getting a live action.
What the hell?
Okay, your hand's actually massive. What?
No. I don't.
So there we go. But no, P is on my mouse, so
that makes sense.
I don't actually press the P button.
What do you mean? Yeah, to accurately play Druid, you have to be able to smash your finisher button, be it bite, rip, Primal Wrath, whatever. So you have to have it on a keyboard button so you can just slam it as hard as possible. So
I do quite often hit my Ferocious Bite button so hard that it like unsuck it from the keyboard. It's kind of unfortunate.
I don't know about that hard, but that's good.
Well,
that's real unluck.
I guess we softened the blow initially here with the memes and the bit of the banter about the history of the kitty cat druid, but I want to open the can of worms, or I put actually here in my notes, worm monkeys, I suppose, because it's that awkward. Hippo, community perception. And
for anyone who can't see this, he spelt it P-U-R-R.
Yes.
For both of them.
Yeah, perception.
He's very happy with himself about that.
All right, so community perception is like the most overwhelmingly negative thing I think of any spec or class. Like, I think Enhance has the same thing where just you will not get invited to a pug group because Blizzard doesn't like you or something. Even though like these classes, like they're fine. Like I would say Feral Druid is in a perfect state to do literally any content, like cutting edge or not. But the community's perception is so overwhelmingly negative from just like years of Feral being, I guess, subpar. When I don't think Feral has ever been unplayable. I think the most recent tier where Feral has been like bad was Uldir, but even then it was fine to play, right?
Even then it got buffed, like it got consistent buffs. And it actually ended up like nutty single target.
Feral Druid has never been nerfed, I feel like. The last patch it got nerfed was like in BC or something.
No, we've looked this up. It was a Blackrock Foundry patch.
Oh,
where they nerfed it because of PvP and it overflowed
Yeah.
to PvE as well. It was like
but Feral Druid,
5.2.
it's one of those classes that only receives
5.1?
buffs, and if it's ever getting nerfed, it's because PvP. You could call it a PvP class, I guess, because that's like where Feral has seen the most success. But I don't know. It's bad, but I really do
0.2.
think that Feral Druid, in its current state, it doesn't need a buff, it doesn't need a nerf. It's like perfectly fine.
But this is the weird thing. Now you say that. How
Yeah.
many aura buffs, tweaks, tunes, numerical bonuses have you gotten in BFA so far? Because that's probably part of the perception problem. You've got like 6 or 7 of them.
It's a lot. Like I'd say it's like 45% aura buff just across the board, and then like whatever mastery buff we just got last patch, which was a very big part of pushing us into like irrelevancy, like even being like, I guess I wouldn't say overpowered, but very strong at Mythic Plus with new AoE Rip talent, Primal Wrath, very good. AoE Hero, not good. Primal Wrath, very good.
So like a lot of the aura buffs were kind of wiped out by the recent changes, where they like rebalanced the talent tree and they changed how mastery worked and some other stuff. I'm not sure we've gotten a buff since then.
I can't remember anything.
I don't think we've gotten a buff since then, but yeah. So a lot of them, like, they re-changed how stuff was going to work, and since then it's been pretty solid.
Yeah, I think the last notable buff was,
Delete Saber
well,
Tooth.
obviously 8.15 giving you mastery stuff, but the AoE hero, it's a big problem because it gives you like good Mythic Plus viability, right? Like Primal Wrath, very strong Mythic Plus, but then you have this Brutal Slash talent, and then you just have a dead talent. The Brutal Slash talent is only there to be the single target AoE talent, which is like annoying. Like it shouldn't really exist, but you just have it because there's no other way you can get around it. And I don't know. I don't know what they could do. I don't have any ideas about like making the spec better in all situations, because currently if you don't have Primal Wrath, you don't do AoE. But if you do have Primal Wrath, you don't, or you do a lot of AoE, but you do single target that is barely less, but it's a lot more clunky because you don't have Brutal Slash. Which
I think that is part of what I think the devs want, though, in that like that choice row. But that's also, again, a sticking point. A lot of this, it's funny. If you would like to go back after you watch this show here live, or you watch it on YouTube, or listen to it on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, or wherever, right? And listen to the conversation that we had in Legion, because it's sort of like a teeter-totter, right? Where you have this very snapshotty bleed focused, and then when all the legendary combinations came into play, you sort of had this just bite lol build that came into play late Legion, and that's sort of where you've gone back to again. So it's weird that Ferocious
What patch
Bite.
did we do the Legion show in?
I can go double check.
It was Nighthold.
Was it
Like
Nighthold?
Was it Nighthold? Okay, yeah.
That was
So that
when
was
you
before
started
the
using
like,
fights
yeah.
in your rotation, but like barely. It seems like Legion and BFA first patch has been fully snapshot bleed based, and then you'll get some buff or some compensation. It's like, oh, now we're direct damage based, and then you go back to bleed based on like TOS, but you start doing more direct damage, and then they just completely overhaul your spec by giving you Brutal Slash, which just made you completely direct damage from then on out. Like bleeds.
Yeah, well, the Nighthold patch was the big brutal Slash buff, wasn't it? Because that was Gul'dan.
No, it was TOS when that happened.
No.
we're talking about different things, but
Oh,
I'm not talking about the like the full rework, but because they buffed Brutal Slash for Nighthold, which is why you ended up using it on Gul'dan, right?
yeah, I remember Gul'dan. Feral was like actually one of the better specs. It was just like a scuffed Fury Warrior, which was the best spec by far. But Feral was like right behind it, and it was very good.
So we're going. We're diving a lot into some stuff in the past, but let's go. I'll go all the way back to the new talent iteration started, Mr. Pandaria forward. And what do you guys think of the development journey that Feral Druid has gone under? And this can go in a few different ways. If you want to bring up maybe something that, are there any major pieces of the past that you want move forward? Are there any parts of the kit right now that you could just be like thumbs up, PogChamp to be removed forever? And
okay, so there's a really obvious one here.
Yeah.
That we're going to leave for a little bit because we can talk so much about snapshotting, right?
Yeah.
We can talk for forever about snapshotting. So let's just ignore snapshotting for the moment. For the most part, Feral's remained like pretty consistent since Mr. Pandaria. Like the basic playstyles remained the same. You've got the same kind of basic abilities. your talents haven't changed that much. Obviously, in MOP, you had a lot more utility rows. You had like Heart of the Wild, you had Tranquility, which wasn't a talent, but yeah. You had more mobility. You had like Ursol's Vortex. And for the most part, that's more being stripped out in favor of us having more damage rows now. So I think I preferred how that was. Obviously, they've moved it this way, so that's fine. I really like how AoE works now. Like I know Hippo mentioned it before, but the Primal Wrath AoE is probably the most engaging that AoE has been for Feral since like 4 Forever, maybe. Because like I kind of enjoy multi-dotting. I kind of enjoy it, but it's also kind of aids as melee. And it doesn't really scale up into many targets.
Big annoying.
Yeah, like especially. So there's a big difference here between, say, a council boss. Like multi-dotting on a council boss is really fun in my opinion, and pretty rewarding.
Yeah.
But if you're doing M+, for example, and there's like a bunch of trash mobs, like that is so different because it gets really tedious to actually multi-dot all of them. If you have 5-6
like
targets that live for a short time, like it's just really, really tedious.
Like that Vault of the Wardens pull in Legion, like at the start of the dungeon, where you just pulled everything up until the big doors. Doing that with like tab raking would have been actually just awful. So it just doesn't work for melee like multi-dot, especially when you're like dodging cleaves and all this like awful stuff. It's just not good. So Primal Wrath now, love Primal Wrath, keep Primal Wrath forever. That ability is 100% broken, and I do not understand how it remains balanced to us. It has infinite damage per resources, but keep it, please, Blizzard. I love that ability.
I think a lot of it is because of Soul of the Forest, though. Because pressing Primal Wrath, you gain 5 energy for pressing it. Like,
I mean, yeah, that's true. But even so, it has absolutely insane DPR.
Yeah,
like it's one of the highest DPR
AoE
abilities in the game as it scales up.
What's an Unholy DK? Infinite Rip.
An important note, right? Obviously, Unholy DKs have bonkers AoE because they've got Crogetic AoE, and there's a Wowhead article about that you should go read. But important thing to note about Primal Wrath is because it's applying a dot, it ignores an AoE cap. So for those of you who don't know, when you hit 20 targets, lots of abilities have an AoE cap. So when you hit 20 targets, they start to split the damage between other targets. As opposed to hitting 20 targets for like 1k, you'll hit 30 targets for like 500 or something. I'm pretty sure the maths on that is wrong. But because Primal Wrath applies a dot, the direct damage is AoE capped, but the dot applied is not affected by the AoE cap. So it scales really well into more targets. Yeah, I'm getting flamed with maths here. But we'll just go with that.
Target capped? I don't actually know.
Yes. Yeah, Blade Flurry is target capped.
Well, because it depends. Yeah, it depends on how the math of the ability is. Considering that Primal Wrath just applies a rip to targets.
Yeah. So it applies the rip to everything, and the rip deals full damage.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's just like applying a single target rip to everything around you, basically.
Right. That's what I want to make sure, because when you compare different AoE capabilities, like an Arcane Explosion is going to do an Arcane Explosion to X targets, but after so many targets are hit by the same ability, it's going to diminish. Whereas applying a dot in an AoE sense, it just applies each individual dot, unless they would ever make it so that if you have 8 or more rips up, every consecutive rip does less and less damage, but good luck.
I mean, they could fix it. They could just say it will only apply to 20 targets, and that would be fine. But obviously at the moment it doesn't. Happy with that.
I feel like
maybe I shouldn't talk too much about it.
No, I feel like it's pretty situational that you actually do pulls that big.
Yeah, like
because if you are, but if you imagine you have a ripping pull with 40 moves, even if it was capped, you would still probably get it up on almost anything really quickly.
You press it constantly, and
exactly.
Every third global or something.
So that's a bit of back and forth then. I don't know, Zan, what do you have? Do you have something you want removed or added back over the last 4 expansions that you maybe miss for Feral or we don't need for Feral right now? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the meta point, I guess. Well, the meta point is that I think spec is a bit too fast for me. Like, there's a lot of APM. There's a lot of APM, but there isn't a lot of decision making involved, right? So you have a lot of times where you maybe spam 4 shreds or something like that, which doesn't really have a lot of decision making, right? It's not like, oh, I have multiple options. No, you're just spamming shred because you have tons of energy from various sources. Yeah, that's kind of probably my biggest pet peeve with the spec compared to how it used to be, because for most of the history from like Mists or so forward, it was fairly slow. It sped up towards the end of expansions always, but it was still fairly slow. And now it's just not. Now it's like very like normal paced, I guess, compared to average spec.
I brought up the current patchwork actions per minute on Simulation Craft, and Feral sits around 52 right now.
Yeah, so you actually had the exact same thought as me. I got the Nighthold one. And back in Nighthold, we sat around at 45.
Oh,
So it's gone up by like 7 APM per minute, which probably doesn't sound by much, but it feels very different, especially with how you're using energy. Especially with Sabertooth. There was a lot more sort of... Because in Nighthold you didn't play Sabertooth. So for those who don't know, Sabertooth, when you... With Ferocious Bite, a target with Rip, it will apply 30 seconds or something extra Rip duration. Actions per minute. Hell yeah.
Basically, full...
yeah. So, because you didn't play with Sabertooth, you wanted to play a lot more around your energy so that you could keep Rip and Rake up consistently. But now that you have Sabertooth, you don't worry so much about your Rip duration, so you can spend your energy pretty much as you get it, which very much changes how you're thinking about your energy. So there's an APM change there, and then there's a change in how you're using that APM.
Right.
And those two together kind of very much change the flow of the spec.
So the too fast point, that seems pretty unanimous though. Interesting. I don't think anyone said anything about something returning from the past though. I guess lesser APM.
Somebody's shouting out in chat Symbiosis, and I would love that ability back.
Gosh.
That ability would be so broken right now, there's no way.
It was probably overpowered, but it was kind of a fun ability. But then again, there were times when it kind of just sucked. Like if you didn't have a priest in your raid, or like
couldn't get dispersed, couldn't get bubble,
or like some other awful class wanted your Symbiosis for some reason, like Warlocks wanting like Growl or something for some reason,
Right.
and then you couldn't get your like dispersion or other stuff.
Warlocks, you got Soul Swap from the Warlock. I don't remember what
Soul Swap was actually good. That's true. Rogues
you got Soul Swap and they got like
Growl.
Rejuvenation or something.
Oh, I think it was Reju.
Yeah, so it was Rogues with Growl, and Growl gave them damage reduction, but it also taunted.
Or your Paladin, you get Bubble or Disperse. Very, very good.
I mean, Symbiosis was very good, obviously, but like that, it was just impossible to balance, right? Like it was such a big variance in what you got from the specs. Yeah. Like I fully understand why that isn't around anymore. But yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
There was also the good banter of having Vengeance,
have any
right?
Ability return.
Vengeance bug with Heart of the Wild.
Heart of the Wild would be a lot of fun, but only for the other specs, not Feral. Feral, you don't do much. Heart of the Wild.
I guess, yeah.
You just press Trank, but you don't have Trank anymore, so you just press Wild Growth.
No, I guess that's like there are things I would miss, but they are mostly utilities things. Like I loved having Trank. I know healers probably didn't, but like I liked having that kind of utility. Mm-hmm. I feel like there was a lot of stuff like that which were very druidy that I liked.
Oh yeah. And
like Heart of the Wild, Moonkin Weaving or Wrath Spam, whatever. That Heart of the Wild just felt more like what I think affinities are supposed to be than the affinities do. Because the way you use affinities right now is, you either, for Feral anyway, you either use Rest Affinity for Swiftmen as basically like a weaker health stone type thing, or you use them for the passives essentially. Like you can be cute and like cause wild growth from Rest Affinity, whatever, in downtime and stuff like that. Like that's fine, but like it's very, very marginal effect, and you barely ever use the active part of the affinity. Like they are just passives essentially you choose for some defensive or offensive utility. Right? And I feel like that's super disappointing.
Big utility.
Yeah, it's just very disappointing to pick something like that for a passive when it could be such a big gameplay thing, like where you actually got something meaningful.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to say obviously that healing or whatever is not meaningful, but it is very marginal compared to what like Heart of the Wild.
There's a lot of
Heart of the Wild was like that big burst of like stuff.
Yeah. There's a weird evolution of Druid over the course of expansion to expansion, how Blizzard either tries to give a lot of that druidy cross-roll, cross-classy, range to melee or healer to tanky to back and forth kind of a thing. And with like right now, Resto Druids, a Mythic Plus in the meta, that it comes up a lot that they just get chosen outside of when we're setting up the show talking about Igneous potential for Restoration Shaman, and we had the Elemental Shaman show last week, and they talked about it as well. It's weird that they have like one trait that shifts up that meta within that like healer or range DPS balance, and oh goodness, but we have cat weaving and we had, bear weaving or moonkin weaving, all those other different things that druids could do that Blizzard keeps trying to tone back a little bit here and there, but they don't hit it the right tempo, or one part of the 4 specs gets way more of it than the others, and then that's when like the rifts kind of start to show, or the cracks in. It's a strange way
like
to
obviously
go.
the big one now for like play style is Feral Affinity for the rest of the druids, or it used to be for Guardian as well back in like Legion,
Each
where you can
spec,
actually use the form.
Each spec has like their own affinity basically. Like if you're Resto, you're usually taking Feral Affinity so you can cat weave.
Mhm.
If you're Guardian, you're taking Resto so you can off heal. You can sometimes take Balance, but you're not going to do much with it.
Okay, you can't say Guardian and not
those
shout out
vague,
Feral
but,
Ability and cat weaving.
Feral Druid's Moonkin form, if they take Balance Affinity, actually has a 1.5 minute cooldown.
Mhm.
So any amount of Moonkin weaving that could have ever been possible is just ruined instantly by that. That's kind of unlucky. I'd love to Moonkin weave. That sounds like a great time.
Oh god, I hate you so much.
Yeah, like Feral Affinity.
Don't suggest that.
What do you mean? Feral Affinity, I would almost literally never take Resto Affinity. I know these two would disagree. I think
I have a
plus 3
screenshot of you saying you take Resto Affinity.
Okay, yeah, whatever, that's fine. But I think plus 3 range is literally the best utility you could give to any melee.
It's
just
real
giving
dumb.
them plus 3 range.
It's
like
real
it's
dumb.
actually so overpowered in my opinion. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
So
And it used to be 5.
Yeah, it used to be 5, which is even better.
Yeah, only
I know that
Moon
currently
can get
Outlaw
5.
Rogue has that.
Acrobatic
Outlaw Rogue has plus
Strikes. Yeah. We
Yeah,
talked
and
about
it's
that
plus
on
3, but also Outlaw Rogue's abilities, like Dispatch, has like a 10-yard range for some reason. No idea why. And they
Selfless
also have
plug.
stuff like Pistol Shot.
Yeah, we talked about that on the Outlaw Rogue show. That was our first show for BFA, and that was one of the big talking points about how melee having a lot of range is pretty good, especially in this realm of melee in Battle for Azeroth. But so I think the snapshotting conversations and dots are all going to like just pepper itself throughout the entire show. So
Yeah, bring back snapshotting.
Just
give me Rune of Reorigination.
Give me Roro.
No,
literally.
see, because that's the one thing that I was trying to set Hippo up, because he said in my notes, and he linked this, he said, I would like this back.
It's Rune of Reorigination. It basically, I don't quite remember what it did, but it basically took your
what the heck?
Okay, I know what it did. I used it in remote, obviously. I can't remember what it did. It took your highest or your lowest stat and put it into your highest stat or something. So you would have
it took all your other stats
to be
and
like,
gave you double in your higher stats.
Yeah, so you would have like one more mastery than crit haste, or I think it was called multi-strike then, whatever. And you would literally you would get this insane mastery spike, and then you'd use all of your snapshotting abilities and then put a rip and a rake on the boss, and it would just do insane damage.
Yeah.
Because you just got like, I think Trinket snapshotting was literally so much fun. I think almost every spec could abuse it, and I don't understand why they took it out, because it's so much fun to do, and I don't see why they took it away, besides it just being completely overpowered, I guess.
Oh, well,
like now we get into the weird situation with like, if we had snapshotting back right now, obviously Sabretooth, we talked about Sabretooth a bit ago, Sabretooth would actually be broken with Trinket snapshotting, and that's part of the problem, right, I guess? And stuff like Absolute Corruption.
That would be insane right now. Something like Gale Callers would be a lot better for
Gale
Feral,
Callers, the Unat Trinket.
Yeah. I think right now, if they brought back Trinket multi or snapshotting, Feral Druid would be insane, because you could just get a mastery buffed grip with Sabretooth.
I mean, it just wouldn't be balanced because Sabretooth exists.
No, but obviously they would rebalance around that.
Yeah.
Like, it would be a big enough change that they would have to rebalance. But the thing with snapshotting that makes it so entertaining is because it actually mixes up your gameplay, right? Like, you would see a proc and you would actually be able to react to it and change your game. And snapshotting isn't the only way to achieve that, right? Like, it's a similar effect to, for example, if you can pool enough resources and then, right? So, for example, back then you could like pool up and cast a bunch of chaos balls if you were a warlock. And that's a similar thing where, I get a trinket proc, so I try to save whatever shards or embers or something. You know, that kind of gameplay just means that you care about procs, right? And it changes what you do. And you can actually adapt to it. Whereas And that's really what we want, and why we like snapshotting as druids, right? Because if now you kind of get a proc, and I mean, yeah, you look at it after the pull, and you're like, oh, I did a lot of damage. Did I get a lot of procs? But like, it doesn't really change anything during the gameplay for the most part, and that's kind of what people like.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. I like that chain of thought for those that actually utilize it a lot more. But I think the one point that I would be contrarian on with this is that way that the game is currently balanced right now, and the way that the game sort of sits outside of like maybe one specific, if a trinket exists in this way, there are a lot of just procs that just exist that you really don't react to anymore. So unless Blizzard changes how the core of the game, that like any type of proc would be meaningful, maybe like potentially how they used to be back in the day before we live in this legendary and artifact world and Azeroth world, and we're going to see in the essences world in the future. And essences aren't procs; they're all like on use. The effects you're really going to react to, right? So that's the tough one. But how about reacting to? I'm going to just bring this up on screen, and I think Guilty has something he wants to talk about with the Mythic Plus meta and these.
No.
So there's two talents I have
Right.
selected
Predator
here.
moment of clarity. Right. So we talked about this in Cap Chat. So shout out to Cap Chat. But so Predator moment of clarity is like it's been a controversial subject recently because for the most of the expansion it's just been Sabertooth, Blood Talons, Heaven, right? And for the most part it still is like that, right? If you're not sure what to take, just take Sabertooth and Blood Talons because usually they will be better. They're easier to play. There's less requirements for how you change how you pull, but Predator and Moment of Clarity do exist as talents, and you can take them sometimes. If you're making like really big pulls, if you're making like constant pulls, certain dungeons. I know Hippo talked about this before. I think Hippo has a list of dungeons that he approves for Predator as the only MDI Feral, so shout out to that. But yeah, so Predator, for those who don't know, if a target with a bleed on it dies, you refresh Tiger's Fury. Tiger's Fury gives you 60 energy and 15% damage or something for some amount of time. Moment of Clarity doubles the proc rate of clear casting and makes your abilities that you can consume clear casting with do a lot of damage. So the big thing with these is obviously that you'll have more energy and you'll have more damage on certain abilities, right? Those two things. So it synergizes really well with certain Azeroth traits like Wild Flesh Rending, which Hippo will want to talk about later because he hates that trait. And when you apply Thrash to a target, Shred and Swipe will do bonus damage. Shred and Swipe are both abilities that consume clear casting, so there's chains in here. So it switches a lot of your damage from being purely Primal Wrath focused, where you're just like spamming Primal Wrath, to being a lot more of your damage is now shifted to Shred. Not Shred, that would be stupid. Swipe, that's the one. And it's a lot more bursty. It deals a lot of AoE damage.
Basically, any dungeon you can make a big pull. I have the list right here. Predator dungeons are dungeons that you can pull big in, and like you're supposed to pull big in. Like Freehold, Motherlode, Tol'degor, Waycrest, Siege of Borealis is kind of like you can do big pulls, but if you're doing the dungeon correctly, you're just doing cheese with stuff, and that's an unfun dungeon. We hate that dungeon. And Sabertooth dungeons are like boss-focused dungeons, like dungeons that have really hard bosses or you can't make big pulls, such as like a Dazar'alor, King's Rest. Temple is for sure. Never run Mock Pred in Temple. That's a trap because Galvats is the hardest boss in the game. You want to do as much boss damage to him, even on a fortified week. Easy wipe. Shrine, I'd say Underrot is also a Pred Mock dungeon, but depending if you actually do reaping with bosses, you could easily take Predator or Sabertooth and such. But
and to be clear about this,
yeah,
because I looked at this on Hoof-Hearted log. So Hoof-Hearted, another Feral Druid, he's really bad at cropping, but he's quite good at playing Feral. I think he's the highest rated.io Feral at the moment.
I am actually.
Are you actually? Do I actually believe that you played Feral for all those dungeons?
Okay, there's some rest of them. I played Feral for all the DPS keys. It's not even a lot of IO score because I don't do keys often, and neither does he.
So Hoof-Hearted, I looked at one of his logs, and it was a teaming fortified. So it's like ideal in terms of like lots of trash and doing most of the trash. And it was something like in order to adjust the damage that he would have lost from Sabertooth just on bosses, And this is only from the Ferocious Bite damage increase, and not the fact that he gets far more Ferocious Bites in than he would otherwise. It had to be something like he gained 5 or 6% on AoE trash, which is a lot of damage, right? Like 5 or 6% damage is a significant chunk of damage. So even when it's optimal for Predator Moment Clarity, it is just easier and simpler to play Sabertooth. So if you're not sure, then play Sabertooth.
Like
That's
the easy rule is that like the Sabertooth build still does pretty good AoE, but like you can get more AoE from the Mock. Well, the Predator builds essentially. Mock is slightly separate.
Mock is just a bonus.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so,
It's weird.
obviously this is a point that Zan was getting at, but Mock and Predator, they're not tied together. Obviously we're talking about them here together because they kind of are, but you can take Predator while still taking Blood Talons, you can take Mock while still taking Sabertooth.
So Mock versus
probably
Blood
wouldn't
Talons is
recommend it.
about your traits, not about... So Mock versus... So if you're doing the Predator build and you're focusing on swipe, then you want to stack Wild Flesh Rending. And if you stack 3 Wild Flesh Rending traits, Mock will overtake Blood Talons. Which means that if you're actually optimizing these builds, typically it would be Predator and Mock. But if you, for example, have, say, only 2 Wild Flesh Rendings or 1 or whatever, then if you're running Predator, because it's a very AoE heavy dungeon, then Blood Talons will still be better. So that's basically where that comes in, right? So if you're optimizing it, it's fair enough to talk about them as a build, like a Mock Predator build, because you're optimizing for both. But if you just, I have one set of gear or whatever and have some choices, it's a completely, like, it's still fine to run Blood Talons with Predator. Like, those things still work together. It's not it's not a requirement to run both, basically.
I had other things in here, and I was actually trying to look this up on their screen. I don't know how do you look up highest ranked Feral Druids on Raider.io?
Okay, so the way you do it is you go to Druid and then you click through all of them until you find somebody who's done keys as Feral.
There's actually...
And you waste a lot of your time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's some... The Feral Druids that actually do Mythic Plus, there's some Korean out there. There's Hoof. I hardly do Mythic Plus, but I have decent score. And then there's some Alliance guy. I know nothing about him, but he has high score. But the way you find it on Radar, there is a way to search, but if someone has ever done a Feral Druid key, they will be considered a Feral Druid. So even if they're a Resto Druid main, they'll just classify them as a Feral Druid because they've done a key as Feral. So it kind of skews it.
The stats are crazy, though. Right now, in timed runs anyway, 155,000 balanced druids to 34,000 feral druids.
Yeah, that'll happen. That's the... I actually
weirdly here,
balanced druid is the worst spec in the game in Mythic Plus. Don't take that spec. It's so bad. It has Wonder Demon quality, and it's like trees. Like, why?
But even then, it's not always
that
good.
That spec does nothing. It's so bad. I don't understand. Like, I see these screenshots all the time. People are like, hey, are you balanced or feral? You'll tell them feral, and then you'll get declined from the group, or you join a group and they tell you to play balance. You're like, no, I'm feral. They'll kick you. Like, I don't understand why you would want to balance druid in your key in the first place. But the fact that it's that skewed, that goes to show with like community perception and just like people looking at the highest keys. Because in these super high keys, balance druid actually isn't too bad because you get necrotic weeks where you have to play trees, or I don't know, just they don't do AoE damage. They do good single target, good for them. But I just don't understand. Like, this is it goes all back to the community perception stuff about how balanced druid is just like favored over feral and Mythic Plus when feral druid is just better in every way. It's confusing to me.
Well, that's sort of what I brought up as a bookend to, we talked about that on the Elemental show last week, and Shaman historically, and then the DPS specs, right? You're talking to an enhancement main. The kit that we have, and the AoE slow, the AoE stun, the ranged interrupt on the shortest cooldown in the game. Obviously, we bring Bloodlust. We have group sprint. You guys do the same thing with Roar versus Windrush Totem. And you guys have Battle Res, we don't. We have Ankh, which has come to prominence only because of Unat. We have all these things in the kit, but community perception is always, if it doesn't do the damages, I can't do the keys. Which, that's what I have on here right now, right? is there something overall fundamentally lacking in the kit for the Feral Druid? And then there's something that could be introduced to achieve the V word.
So,
Well,
like,
Like
me and Zad have talked about this. Me
Yeah,
and
but-
Zad have talked about this a
yeah,
lot, man.
but it's complicated because it depends what you want. So one way to make anything viable, right, is buffing it to the point where it's the best DPS spec in terms of raw damage.
Metal Shaman.
Yeah, and I mean, you can do that to any spec, and it does vary. I mean, it's usually warlocks, but whatever. And the thing is, that can happen, and that makes you viable for a tier as long as you're overpowered, basically. But the real thing people are usually talking about is like this quality some specs kind of have, which is you're always brought to things because you're always
Rep
reasonable, right?
paladins.
No, but so like there are certain utility which is always good, basically, and to a point where it makes you viable almost on its own because you know that this is always a useful quality. I would say more in raids than necessarily, but it is similar in both. Like, and even in a plus some specific utilities of Azeroth. You could give so you could say that Feral lacks something like that. We definitely do. We don't have, something extremely strong. Like we don't have a shroud or a debuff or a raid debuff or something that would make us always appealing, right? Evergreen in that sense. We don't, right? We don't have any super strong utility. We don't have any immunity, right? There are things like that which you could argue we are missing. On the other hand, I don't think the kit lacks anything specific that makes it, that is, we really need this, right? I feel like the kit is actually pretty well-rounded. It's just that there's nothing uniquely super powerful that people just want all the time. So it's kind of hard to talk about viability, in my opinion, because balancing is fine, but we are average, which, most specs are at any given point. Yeah.
So someone just said Feral has Roar in chat. Stampeding Roar, literally, you could not use it. You wouldn't notice a difference. There is one scenario in like one key where Roar would be good if you like need to Roar Shroud something in like a long hallway and you can't mount up. Roar is so useless. That's if you consider that utility in Mythic Plus specifically, you're wrong. In Raid, it's fine. Like you have a lot of uses for Roar, like such as Jaina, killed Jaden for Guardian Druids, but I mean Feral Druid had it too. It's good in raids, but useless in Mythic Plus. I also think that Rogue obviously has too much. That's no secret.
Right.
Like, if you gave Roar a talent in the mobility tree to just, instead of speed, giving you stealth, sure, Feral's good now. But that's not like a good way to buff specs. That's just, I wouldn't call it lazy, but that's boring. I think that Rogue in general, like Outlaw and Feral, they do similar damage in keys. I think they actually do like very similar damage. Like Feral Druid does a lot of damage right now in Mythic Plus. If you are pulling around things and using Predmock, you do very good damage. But you don't have Sap, you don't have Blind, you don't have Shroud, which those three things are just so overpowered compared to any other CC.
So what I'm hearing here is bring back Cyclone.
I don't think that'd do it.
I don't think
Cyclone...
Cyclone would fix it because it only lasted 6 seconds in PvE, right? Which isn't long enough.
I think it lasted 20 seconds if you Cyclone to PvE mob. But I think if there was a way, like, okay, so Hibernate, that spell useless. Even if you use it on a beast, if you walk by it, it's one of those like a paralyze where if you walk by the mob while it's hibernated, you will get in combat.
Still aggro's.
Not like Sap. Yeah, it's not like Sap. If Feral Druid had a Sap-like CC, then I think it would be very desirable. But it doesn't. I think Root is very good. I think that Typhoon is very good, but you have to know how to use them, and you have to have dungeon knowledge for those to be good. But a Rogue just has everything and does good damage, and Feral Druid has good damage and has not Rogue utility. That's the problem.
Well, I like that, and to button hook back to what Zan said, it's not that Feral is lacking something specific, it's just that there are other specs that are still way up in the tiers, and even the Outlaw Rogue said this. They talked about how degenerate Shroud was. Go back and listen to the Outlaw Rogues talking from their perspective, saying that, yeah, Shroud's pretty good, and obviously Acrobatic Strikes. And
that's one way of putting it, pretty good, yeah.
They have 360-degree AoE as a melee. That's pretty good. Right, so those things, I think, and pinpointing those, not just giving things and throwing stuff on Feral, even though chat's like symbiosis. That's, I think, the way it was going to be approached. But we're not going to see.
Wait, so somebody actually mentioned Soothe.
Yeah,
So we didn't talk about
Soothe is
Soothe
really
for a
good
second.
this expansion,
yeah.
actually. Soothe
So
is really good this
One of
expansion.
the most OP things about Soothe, which is actually OP, is you can soothe off raging, right?
Mhm.
Which is situational,
Oh.
but
Yeah,
it is
I think-
actually like it's actually broken.
There's some
Well, I don't
weakness,
understand why that's the
necrotic
thing.
raging where you would just take a druid because they can soothe, like specifically a balanced druid, obviously because trees, necrotic, and then raging. You just hard counter that affix. But
That's the thing,
Feral
right?
Druid and like
All the
there's
other
so many
specs have it.
keys where there's raging things that like people don't even realize. Like, okay, well, the first boss room in King's Rest, one of the melee mobs enrages and it just like 100% increased damage and 50% increased attack speed. Soothe that or you die, basically. So you have to have a BM hunter or a druid to soothe that. But the problem with soothe is that resto druids have soothe, so it doesn't matter if feral
Yep.
druids have soothe.
I was waiting for you to get to that.
Yeah, so any utility that Feral Druid currently has that could be considered good, a Resto Druid has, and in any Mythic Plus you're doing that's like any sort of pushing content, even if you're just doing a 10, you want a Resto Druid because that's just, hey, guess what? Best spec in the game for Mythic Plus. Unlucky. It's like Prot Warrior, but healer.
Well, it's so interesting because in the Resto Druid show in Legion, we obviously talked about their incredible dominance in almost lots of raid encounters, and then of course the Mythic Plus meta. And then I did all my beta testing going into BFA, the first and second passes like I do, and Blizzard definitely hammered in certain things to take away power from Resto, and they gave priests different power points, and they gave holy paladins different power points, and it still wasn't enough. So I can't imagine what the devs are thinking. Are going like, what can we do?
Yeah. Well, I know recently they've tried nerfing Resto Druid and Mythic Plus, and then they just ended up buffing them in Mythic Plus and nerfing them in Raid. I know in BOD, Resto Druid was like really bad, but you could still take one, I guess. I think this Raid, they're a lot better. A lot of guilds are using them on Unat because of Phase 3 healing. But in Mythic Plus, it goes like Resto Druid, HPOW, everything else. Or you could put HPOW the same strength as Mistweaver. But like Resto Druid is like, and then Resto Druid, it's like 4 notches down, and then you have H-Pal on Mistweaver. Like it's not even close to the amount of healing and damage you can do. It's ridiculous. But that's not a Feral Druid topic. That's just
I can see Torsi's in chat, right?
Indirectly, right? It affects us indirectly. For whatever reason, they're good, right? It just means that all our utility with combat resist stuff as well, with the exception of Stampeding Roar, which we have already said is pretty useless, it's brought by them anyway, and it's much easier to justify bringing a Resto Druid in. Like you would never bring a Feral because you need his utility when you could just it's easier to fit in, a Resto Druid anyway, which probably is the better choice anyway.
We're going to see something.
So to link up 2 topics quickly.
Yeah,
right?
go for it.
We talked about affinities earlier and feral affinity, right? And I can see Torti's in the chat. The biggest buff to feral in Mythic Plus, right, would be deleting feral affinity. If they deleted feral affinity and Resto didn't do damage, then like the feral utility that Resto also brings would like become far more relevant. Because obviously we've covered balanced druid sucks. If you deleted feral affinity, like great, that's over there, doesn't do damage anymore. And then you just got feral because druid only has 3 specs. Guardian just doesn't exist, and that spec doesn't exist. Nobody mentioned it in chat.
So another thing about cat form in general, sorry, but Resto Druid, a lot of people don't know this, but there is certain mechanics in Mythic Plus that if you are in cat form, you literally cannot get targeted by them. Like 2 that are like very big and people use a lot is the big tree boss in Waycrest. I don't know its name. It's in the courtyard.
Yeah, you can't be rooted.
Yeah, you can't be rooted by that. If you are in cat form, but you can do that as Resto as well, like, or any druid spec, I guess. But that's
like, we're not saying you can shift out of it.
Yeah.
You actually just
literally,
it doesn't get cast on you.
If you are in cat form and get targeted, it will not go on you. And freehold or rat traps, if you are in cat form, you can walk over them and nothing will happen to you. So it's just like little things like that Resto Druid also have. Just like Resto Druid existing as a whole makes Feral Druid worse, which is unfortunate.
That's basically that.
Okay. I wanted to, so we can talk for a few months here about sort of a little bit of the dovetail on everything else we've sort of summarized here about bleeds, the rotation. What does the Feral Druid damage breakdown look like now? which
There's
is
a whole lot of bite.
Whole lot of bite.
But it's so interesting to hear that, and then it comes with like giggles because last expansion it was a whole lot of rip.
Yeah. No, they
Now,
just
to be
flip-flop
fair,
it.
there's still a decent amount of rip, right? But it's a whole lot of bite, man.
Yeah.
I think bite, your rake and your rip, like equal to like 5% less than your bite or something, which is kind of ridiculous. Like all your damage, like you can have some insane RNG swings. If every single one of your bites crit, you're doing like 5k more than another Feral Druid who just has like normal bite crits.
Yeah.
But that's
Which is
So there's a couple of things which led into this, right?
sure.
So obviously we've talked about Sabretooth before. So with whatever the last patch was, I can't fucking remember. 815? Was it 81?
Yes.
I can't remember. Sabretooth became the like go-to talent in that row because they moved Sabretooth in the row. It was already the go-to talent, but they changed which row it's on. So now it's on the Lunar Inspiration Predator Sabretooth row, which is obviously kind of nuts. But then they also buffed Mastery. So what they did to Mastery is previously it only worked on bleeds. And now it works on bleeds and finishes. And Sabretooth is a finisher, right? So suddenly Sabretooth has Mastery scaling. Sorry, what was that, Zan?
Ferocious Bite is
Yeah,
a finisher.
Ferocious Bite,
Sabretooth
yeah.
is the talent. That's clear.
Yeah, Ferocious Bite is a finisher, Sabretooth is a talent. Thank you for that. Yeah, so suddenly, not only is it on a weaker talent row, it now has Mastery scaling. And the result of that is that Sabretooth is something like 15% better on single target than the next talent in that row, which is obviously just an absolutely obscene number. Like, that's a not tunable number. I know this is something Zan's looked at before in terms of like twitching around in Simcraft and seeing how that turned out to balance Sabretooth.
Yeah, it's really, really bad. Like, I think in the least bad case, yeah, you get 10 percentage units of the AP. So that's a 10% increase from having Lunar Inspiration, right? Basically, like if you switch is the second best. So if you have that, you basically get 10% additional DPS, which is an insane talent number. We're talking about talent, balance issue at like 2% better or something. This is like more than twice as strong, that talent compared to the others. It's insanely unbalanced. And you can basically not nerf it because the way the talent works. So the way the talent works, right, is that it extends the duration, so that you basically don't have to reapply RIP. And the problem with that is, as long as the talent works like that, you either never have to cast RIP more than once, or you have to reduce the number of how much extension you get to the point where you still have to cast RIPs occasionally. And that would functionally, change the talent to something completely different. So there's basically no tuning point. They cannot adjust this number at all. Like, it does nothing unless they basically completely rework the talent. And it is, so that is a really big issue, actually. It's just super overpowered. And there are ways to approach it, but really the talent needs to be reworked, or they need to functionally change something in the core spec. Because the way as long as it exists on that row, they'd have to buff Moonfire by well over 100% to compensate, to make it. It's insane.
It sounds like you hint at the way they could fix it is that instead of Sabretooth and the interaction with Ferocious Bite refreshing the duration of your RIP, right? Which pandemics it.
Actually, no, it doesn't refresh it anymore. It applies a set duration. So it used to refresh it.
What duration?
They changed it.
I think it's I don't know.
It's high enough that it's not relevant that it adds a duration. It basically adds
like
a full duration.
Okay.
RIP.
Because
my point is, it adds. I think it's 4 per combo points, but it doesn't matter. The point is, there's 2 thresholds, right? Either you extend it enough that you will never cast RIP, because you will always be able to cast Bite often enough to keep RIP, or you're below that point, right? And in that case, the talent doesn't remove RIP from your rotation, which is kind of the point of the talent.
Okay.
So there's basically you cannot tune that talent in that way, and that's the number.
And to be fair, that would be a far more interesting avenue for the talent, in my opinion, where you have to balance sort of like, can I get in another bite and then still be able to maintain the RIP, or do I need a RIP now and maybe lose some effective RIP duration? That would be a far more interesting talent to me, at least. And actually, that is how that worked on Legion Beta. Like the first iteration of that talent, you still had to cast RIPs.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that we're now gotten to this point where suddenly it's a problem. But
it sounds like that should be just adding time, and then eventually you can't add enough time to it, so you would be forced to recast. but right now it's a little bit too much.
If that was the
But yeah,
case, we'd
someone
have
mentioned
the
in chat.
slightest amount of interaction, but right now it's just you bite. That's it. One rip, entire fight.
Right.
This Lyzome guy, he was the guy who shouted out Symbiosis earlier, and he just says, but yeah, that's basically what would be fun about snapshotting, right? Because suddenly you're thinking about it.
Yeah. So a core part. And I guess there are a few things in the guide that you wrote about, but I guess before we move on, are there any do's and don'ts that you want to sort of squelch in the community that you may get asked here and there that are common to uncommon misconceptions about Feral Druid currently in BFA? Or some of the things that you may be hearing about rumblings for 8.2. I don't know if you guys have soaked up anything in your communities or in Discord or wherever else.
Yeah, so we can talk about with that. Hippo wants to say something about wild flesh rending, and then I want to say something about wild flesh rending.
All right, so there's this trait called Wild Flesh Rending.
Yes.
It increases your shred and swipe direct damage when the target is suffering from your thrash, which means you have to have thrash for it to work. I get asked this question so many times, and it is the most common question of recent in the Dream Grove of, do I need to keep thrash up for Wild Flesh Rending? Yes, you do, because the talent or the trait would do literally nothing if you didn't keep thrash up. And the fact people constantly ask that question confuses me so much. Like it angers me almost. It doesn't make sense because the tooltip it's not even confusing. It literally just says things do more damage when suffering from your thrash. And people ask me still, do I need a thrash with this trait? I don't understand it, but you do. You do need a thrash with Wild Flesh Rending.
So, to build on Hippo's point there, a lot of the thoughts about Wild Flesh Rending is like people way overthink that. Like, maintain thrash, don't overthink it, don't worry about using it on clear casting, it costs the same energy as shred, so it doesn't matter. So just don't overthink it. Just keep thrash up.
Keep thrash up. Big main.
And the same with Brutal Slash. Don't overthink Brutal Slash too much. Like, people try and min-max it, like use it in Tiger's Fury and like all that stuff. Difference between just like using it off cooldown and then just using it in Tiger's Fury is like sub 3-digit DPS. Like it's small. Just don't overthink it. Because a lot of what people do wrong in Feral is they overthink it and it starts getting difficult and then they're like, man, this is so hard. Just breathe, press your buttons.
I think to be like devil's advocate on that one though, that is mostly because Feral Druid has had the bumper sticker on the van
That's
for
true.
so long that it's like the hardest melee DPS spec in the game. All these things to juggle and all these plates. Yeah, right?
No, that's true. And there's obviously all these gifts that go around of like the spinning plates with like rip on it and rake on it and someone drops it and then it's like, oh no, my DPS is gone.
Yeah.
But to address this, and it goes to community perception, it's not that complicated anymore. Sabretooth drives a lot of the complexity out of the spec, and if you are looking for like a semi-chill melee spec, then Feral actually probably fits that. Realistically, you have like 3 or 4 buttons in your rotation. It's like 1 dot, 1 finisher, 1 builder. You can kind of just chill out, press shred a lot, press some bites, like have a drink in between your bites or something. Rage drunk, which is what we like to do.
Oh, God.
The other thing is, people ask this question a lot about Ferocious Bite. For each point of energy Ferocious Bite has, from 25 to 50 to get increased damage, always bite 5 combo points, 50 energy. Never anything else. You're not an Outlaw Rogue. You can't use your finisher at 4 combo points because your spec was designed poorly. Have to use it at 5 combo points, 50 energy. Outlaw Rogue players aren't human to me, okay? I hate that spec so much.
I feel like we really gotta...
moving on swiftly before we insult the Outlaw Rogues.
Yeah. I feel like we gotta go back to listen to the... I don't remember the Outlaw Rogues having this much spite toward the Feral Druids.
Okay, so you think I'd hate Assassination Rogues because Assassination is just like dumbed down version of Feral. That's what people that actually play Feral and it can play Sen would say. But Rogue in general is like... people that play that class, they just get spoon-fed everything, and then Feral Druid just gets nothing.
Wow.
And it's just unlucky. Okay,
we got like 30 hotfix buffs this expansion.
I don't understand it. They always have a broken spec They
do.
always are viable, and it makes me mad, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The Feral Druid isn't always broken, it isn't always viable, but
This-
rogues can just run around and do whatever.
This clip is going to make it to Paria somehow, and it's going to go show up in the Ravenhold Discord, and you're going to have a lot of ats in soon.
And that's unlucky.
Here
That's
it comes.
fine.
Right, okay.
I will die on this hill that our
Eradicate the last like 5 minutes of what we're talking about, where we just insulted an entire class. Admittedly, we did it with balance
Go
rules
on,
earlier.
go
so
on. I'm
whatever.
sorry.
But okay, so the
I
other
like
thing
that.
we touched on Ferocious Bite, 50 energy, 5 combo points. If you're in Berserk, both parts of that will be affected by the Berserk energy reduction, which is 40% now. So
Okay.
you only need 30 energy and 5 combo points. Yeah, that will almost never be relevant.
Yeah.
Because you'll always have more energy in Berserk than 30, basically, because you do. But yeah, that's another common question.
Okay. Well, you have Zan. Take us out so that I can take a break and we can bring in community questions.
There are a bunch of small, like, we shouldn't undersell. Like, there are things you can do, right? Small things that help you optimize your. It's just that they aren't things you need to do. I feel like this is where people get confused, right? Like, for example, there are situations where you might bite slightly earlier than 50 because your Tiger's Fury is about to run out and you have, like, I don't know, 42 energy or something. It's a gain technically to bite, right? The problem is these things don't matter. Like, you don't need to do them and you get like 98% of the way there, right? 99, whatever, that kind of range. So, like, instead of trying to learn the spec by adding, you know, all possible small edge cases of where you might want to have to think about this or whatever, just throw all that out.
Picture.
Yeah. Just throw all that out. Just go for it. Very simple. Get it down, right? And then you can start thinking about like adding small stuff. I feel like people try to learn Feral. They try to
All at once.
Yeah, and try to like read into small things that is super easy for people that play the spec for a while and has a good, you know, mental model of how it works to do. And then they just get confused because it's too much to think about, which it really isn't, right? Like 99% of it is very easy, basically. That's the key.
Okay. I like that. All right. You guys are getting muted. I'm going to jibber jab about a few things if you guys need to take a break or get a drink while I plug a few things. And then if you have any questions for our guests on the show today, this will be your time to throw those in chat. Of course, I have a couple canned questions in the new FAQ section of the second half or the tail end of the show. But of course, if you miss any of the live shows, they are all archived over on my YouTube channel. So if you want to go check out everything that's over on YouTube, where's the link? Here's the button. I'm trying to make sure I hit the right button here. Then go check out the YouTube channel. You can go hit the subscribe button over there, or you can unsubscribe like everyone else does, and that's totally fine. The goal of my YouTube channel is to actually drive it into oblivion, but all the other shows are all locked in. You can go check out everything from 2019. We have the shows that are all building right now. You can go back to 2018. Look, there's Tattles. Hi, Tattles. You're right there on the thumbnail. I'm covering up your face with my mouse, though. There you go. You can go back to the BlizzCon interviews. I did make my cinematic talk about Safe Haven, if you're interested in any of that kind of stuff. But it's all right there. Just don't go back too far. We realized that there's an episode with Kana without a beard last week. So don't go back that far. Definitely don't go back to 2016. What are you doing? Why would you go back this far? What are you doing? But those are all on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. It's not your first rodeo. Or, of course, if you want more of the live show, specifically this one, we do make BTS after shows, and those go up to the people that are supporting the show, the stream, and everything in between over on the show's Patreon page. Those are sort of off script. There's a couple of questions that I may pull from chat that I push to the after show, but that's just another 20 to 30 minutes of just complete nonsense. And if you really dig back far enough in this one, Preach and I had like a 2-hour episode of one of these. That's sort of the tail end of Legion. And it's funny how much stuff we predicted would be happening right now. And yeah, you can just go check out more of the live show if you enjoy that. And of course, grab yourself that sweet, where is it? There it is. We have a full illustrator. This is a new thing we'll be doing. So every end boss or every final boss of a raid tier now gets a full wallpaper by my key artist, by Tutron, who does all of my thumbnail art for my boss kill videos or whatnot, or my avatar faces, those kind of things. So you can go get that whole thing and slap that on your wallpaper on your computer or your phone. I don't know how that works. Or the big one at the very end there, big shout out to the sponsors of the show, the stream, and all the stuff that I'm working on right now with the huge new 2 PC build through Corsair and Elgato, and soon to incorporate MSI. So those are going to be the three big ones. You can go check the links down below if you're looking for a whole bunch of peripherals. There'll be links, of course, to monitors and GPUs as well. And then if you want any of the extra Elgato side bits, then you can go check out those also. I keep being told that the Elgato Stream Deck is not just for streamers, because it actually has a whole lot of functionality with using it for graphic design or editors. You can make it just a macroable keyboard. You can get all those awesome shortcuts via the Stream Deck. If you haven't heard about Elgato and their peripherals, then now you know. So go check out this link down below. It's linked down here in the YouTube description box if you're watching on YouTube, or right below the stream if you're on Twitch. That's the way you can make sure I can keep doing this. The game's about to change a whole lot in 8.2 with the major and minor essences, and we'll probably get into that right now on this section of the show. But links are all down below. Thank you guys we're going on 5 years of this since MOP. So it'll be something. It'll be definitely something. Alrighty, we'll make sure everyone's back. We're all back. All right,
We're all back.
We have some canned questions, but if you guys see anything in chat you want to bring up, because I'm not gonna vet these like super hard. There could be some trolly questions. I'm sure there might be.
Maybe.
I guess the first one that I wanted to bring up here is, you haven't really gone over it that much, but just give me like a quick one-liner on what's the secondary stats for Feral panning out to be currently, just so people can. It's this.
We really like mastery. We really like crit. We don't mind versatility. We don't mind haste. Kind of. There's no stat that we really love. There's kind of okay stats and good stats. We like stats. Just lots of stats.
Yeah. So crit is like amazing for us because bite crits are like all our damage, but mastery also increases bite damage. So it's like get either or, because you're gonna do around the same damage unless you get some insane crit variance, which won't happen often.
Okay. So I would say in low gear, like before say 4:15 or 4:10, whatever. Crit is probably the best stat because it makes the rotation more fluid to play to a point where if you so I think you should stack crit. Is a good guideline. Don't hate anything else, but like crit is good until you're in very high gear. I do mostly mythic gear or so. Then I think mastery is typically the best stat because it affects every aspect, AoE and stuff, very consistently. So yeah, I would say mastery is the best stat, but all of them are fine. It's nothing like it doesn't like mostly eye level on. Like, ideally with mastery and crit.
Also, you get a lot of free crit from Jungle Fury relics.
Yeah.
Jungle Fury traits.
There's a trait. I don't know if you know. It just gives you, I think it's like 600 crit. So if you get 3, you're getting big crit every time you use Tiger's Fury. So it puts you up to like 50 to 60% crit depending on what you have. And then like trinkets that you want also further increase crit and mastery, like Spyglass Dice, Lurkers, Insidious Gift, things like that.
And there are a lot of good resources for these. Like you're talking about very specific things. I'm sure if anyone doesn't know about this resource yet, I brought this up in my How to Sim Your Character DPS update for BFA and my top like 7 resources right now. But you talk about those things. So just go to Blood Mallet, and Blood Mallet has some awesome curated stats for all of your trinkets. I'm sure that'll be
Blood Mallet have Iron Jaws on it still, Guilty?
Nope.
No.
Okay, it doesn't. We're fine then.
Yeah. Raid bots as well is obviously a really good resource.
Also raid bots. Yep.
Dazar'alor is like the nicest human being alive, and he's constantly putting work into that shit. So big pog to Dazar'alor.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure I just massacred that name, but
no, it's Serial. Yes. Yeah, it's just Dazar'alor.
Someone did ask a question though, very important. Katsuki asked it. What Feral skin color is your favorite? And I'm going to answer that first. The Balance of Power Jungle Stalker white skin. One of the only good skins. That entire row is
You're
good.
actually so wrong.
What
it's actually incredible to me how it's possible to be this wrong.
Okay, so Ghost Cat, I see that automatic noob player to me. That's my brain. It just ticks. I see someone with Jungle Stalker, I'm like, that's a great player. They know, they have taste. They're good at the game. Good player. Good. If I see Owl Cat, I know they are just an unintelligent human being. If you use
actually
Owlcat,
just incredible to me how you
I
got
feel-
this wrong.
I agree. Like the mid shower skin is clearly the best one. The mid shower is like the sparkly cat. That is clearly the best line. I feel
Nyan
like
cat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And Zan's wrong because he thinks the blue one is the best, which is wrong.
The
'cause
purple
the
one
orange or the
is.
purple one.
If you're
Yeah, there
gonna
we
use
go.
one,
Purple one's
you
good.
use
Yeah,
red.
shout out the purple one.
No, you use red if you're gonna use one.
Orange.
Because...
The orange. It's orange. Not
Okay,
red.
whatever. Red, orange, because it has the brightest cloud following you when you run around.
Yeah, the green one is awful. Don't use the green one. If you use the green one, you're actually trolling.
No, you're using the green and the red one for Christmas. That's the only like recent time.
Okay, I don't know about that one.
Oh no! So wait, which one you say your favorite is the Keystone Master one? This one,
that one, the one you have your mice over, blue and white.
The blue and white one. This is the one that looks like the special cat that dies, right?
Dies.
I think.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. It's the purple one.
Oh, yeah, this one.
In one of the Valshara quests.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the one.
I was gonna say spoilers, but that's over a year and a half ago. So come on.
Favorite Druid theory crafters? It's Zan macro. Oh no, that's Fade. It's Zan.
See,
I'm a fan of Bramble Cat myself. If I was playing a cat, Bramble Cat for sure.
Bramble Cat. Okay, the tree one. I've literally never used it. I've never seen anyone use it. I don't know. It's
I used it on beta, and that was the last time I used it.
What?
There's like an orange one, I think, or I don't remember the color scheme on that one, but I think there's one
like
of
an
them that
autumn
actually
one.
looks pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like
Blue
the
Jungle Stalker, the best one. Purple, close second, and then orange. I don't think you should ever use the green one. That looks dumb. But
it looks like.
Okay,
From
it's clarified.
Farnham.
Don't listen to Hippo. Just
I
don't
feel
listen.
like one of the tree cats, the one that looks good, is the one you get from doing like archaeology or something, which is really. I think that was the one that looked good.
It was the
also like
default
the
one on beta.
The PvP ones are really good. The fourth PvP one and the third one. The first two are meh, but look very mean, you know.
Straight up meh.
Okay.
Oh no.
This one I actually want to answer, okay? Because I want to expose Torty, right?
Uh-oh.
There's a bug in the game.
Oh, yeah.
And this is Resto Druid, right? It's not Feral, but it's kind of relevant, right?
Well,
there's a bug in the game where Resto Druid baseline doesn't have Thresh. Certain druids have Thresh as Resto Druid.
Yeah,
Nobody can explain why, but it's there.
I think it was Torty explained it. It was like his character was made in WoD pre-patch or something, and for some reason Thrash was baseline. Then they removed it, and he kept it. It's like very.
Wait.
Yeah.
So
like,
you can bring this up in the Resto Druid show.
It's
but
very
Resto Druid doesn't have Thrash.
It is
he
actually such. If your Resto Druid has Thrash, it is so overpowered because you can run Wild Flesh Rending and you'll just do insane amounts of damage. Like, but only very few druids have it. I don't understand how it can possibly happen. I want it to be removed so Torty can stop flexing his cat DPS logs, and that's my opinion on it.
Well,
I don't understand how a bug like that can even exist. But
Torty was on in Legion, but I'm pretty sure he just got drafted to come right back on. I haven't gone that far ahead because Resto Druid's not going to be until about the 9th or the 16th of June. But I guess Torty, you have to come back on and defend yourself in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, having Thrash baseline as Resto I would argue it's game breaking, but it's obviously not. It's not gonna like one shot a boss, but it's very overpowered. If for some reason your Resto Druid has it.
Okay.
Honestly, I'm just happy because I got to expose Torty.
There you go. How about we're talking about things you liked about the artifact skin, right? And we went over a whole bunch of the different cat cosmetics. But how about a pet peeve that irks you in regards to Feral Druid? And this could be community based, which we kind of went over, but this might be a you thing with the spec or whatever. I think Hippo, you had a pet peeve you wanted to bring up specifically.
I already talked about it. It's the Wild Flesh Rending question.
Oh,
Every time
sure.
that question gets asked.
He's talking about Transmog, you Muppet.
Wait,
no,
no, he's not.
Or how the class plays. Anything. Any pet peeve. Yeah.
Okay, well.
I was going to call you a Muppet, though. Damn.
He calls me that all the time. That's fine. Pet peeves. When they updated the Feral Druid animation, every time you bite, your character like discontorts and
you break your back.
Oh yeah, you go
break your back.
Oh,
you like jump to the side and you like twist your spine. You die basically. Like if that happened to you, you would literally die in real life. I don't understand it.
Oh.
And you can still use the old cat form animation if you have a seed pouch, which is very good. Seed pouch, very good. Use it in all other specs. Also, Dazar'alor troll cat form, not a cat. It's a lizard. Sin. Don't use it.
Ooh.
Somebody actually shouted out my pet peeve in chat. My pet peeve is that I don't get to progress as Feral because our tanks quit mid-progress.
Oh no.
Or they invent a boss where I have to tank as Boomkin for some godforsaken
Yeah,
reason.
I was
Hey!
also thinking as Moonkin Ball. And on Unat, my guild did not allow me to play Feral. My guild leader is a tyrant, made me play Balanced Druid. Terrible human being.
This is not a pet peeve that Zan has.
Well, this is that was part of like one of my subtexts earlier that came up in the show, and I thought if you guys would pay attention to this real quick. Let me go over to the lower third here on Guilty. So his guild name is whatever, and then Zan's guild name is whatever. So there's 2 Feral Druids in a guild, but what progression model have you ever seen that works right now where you've actually seen 2 Feral Druids on a kill? Chat, have you seen this before?
Oz, baby.
Okay, so Vision, my guild, Vision US Straw shouts out. We also have 2 Feral Druids. I'm like a Feral Druid flex player, and then we have a Feral Druid named Meowing, who's like strictly Feral. Very good player, better than me, I'd say. And he's usually never sat for prog because he's an amazing player, but in this tier specifically, he was sad because just terrible raid design, 19 warlocks, whatever. Unlucky. But I know that 2 Feral Druids totally would have worked on Unat. If you removed the rogue in my guild, even though it was the GM, so we couldn't do it, and took 2 Feral Druids Demon Hunter, would have totally worked. Been amazing. Boss damage, durable. Sounds good.
Yeah. So we have Zan, we have me, it's Big Pog. Sometimes I play Feral, sometimes I play whatever the guild needs because I'm an officer and that means that I get the dirty jobs, but that's whatever. Zan is, I think, a better Feral Druid than I am at the moment. I think it's gone back and forth to defend myself between tiers, but Zan is definitely the better player at the moment, so I think I sat myself on Rastakhan for Zan because we only had a spot for 1 melee and I thought he would be better. So that's basically that. He's just a really fucking good player. Like, he's just really fucking good mechanically. Like, he doesn't fuck up mechanics. Like, he does a lot of damage. It's just all around a solid player. So we have 2 Feral Druids sometimes.
It seems like, okay, so Feral in general it's really hard to die on because you have the best personal in the game. You have Bear Form. You constantly are healing yourself if you have Blood Talons. But I don't know. It's really hard to die on, and if you're a good player, you can actually just like literally never die on a prog boss, basically.
Right.
Because you just press Survival Instincts Bear Form, you're literally immune to damage, basically.
I wanted to go to Zan after that incredible gush from Guilty, but he's not on camera, so we don't see him blushing right now.
Unlucky.
All this unsolicited praise. I'm honestly shocked. But no, I feel like that's a good point. Like, I think Ferros is actually fine as a filler DPS in most fights, just because Hippo was talking about, like, our normal utility is really strong. Like, we have 50% baseline movement speed just for being in cat form as a Feral Druid. Now, like, if you play another spec, like, just reflect how big that number is. It's insane, right? Like, 50% is so much. So you basically can compensate for a lot of mechanics just by moving very quickly, right? By default. And we also have dash on top of that, of course. And we also have, an actual shard, like, if we need that too. Like, our mobility is insane. And then you also have 2 stacks of shield wall, right? Like, the combination of this means, I think, on most fights, you're just fine as a filler. Like, you can always basically live. Like, it's very, very easy. So I think that's actually a very good, usability thing Feral has. Like, if you're progressing. So, yeah.
Somebody actually asked like an actual question that isn't like transmog.
Okay.
So should Blizzard let druids share more spells or enhance their niches, like Feral bleeds having effects that rogues lack? Like, obviously there's a lot of things that Blizzard could do in order to like change stuff. Like, there's a lot of places you could put stuff in it. Obviously I'm like humongously biased and I love the like bleed and pooling style. So yeah, I'd like it to be bleeds that get changed. But there's a lot of stuff you could do. I think, as we touched on earlier, the problem isn't really damage, though. It's really, like, utility. I'm not sure that adding effects here would do anything like that. Unless it was, like, something super broken. Like, it reduced the damage the bosses do. But that would just be fucking stupid. So, let's ignore that. But yeah, so I'd like something. I'm not exactly sure what it is. Like, I've had thoughts before about stuff. But obviously, me not work for Blizzard. Me just, like... random British man.
Me play games.
So me play game, me ook. But yeah, so there is stuff they could do. There's a lot of stuff they could do, but I'm pretty happy with how Feral is at the moment. I don't mind if Feral isn't particularly desired in the community perception, because I rule my guild with an iron fist, and and also I only really do like Mythic Plus and stuff with the guild, so it's kind of whatever. So I can just like, if I'm fine, then it's chill, because like I'm playing with people I know. They don't care that I'm playing a spec that is borderline inting. That's not true, but yeah.
I don't know.
Perceived
That's
as.
basically that.
Anyway.
Yeah, perceived as borderline inting. Like, I play with people I know, and that's basically it.
If you're like a
So it's
Feral
whatever to
Druid,
me.
no guild, and your Mythic Plus score is low, you're out of luck.
I
buddy.
imagine it's a hard life, but
yeah,
like,
because like me, always having high eye level, you can link cutting edge achievements, you can do whatever. But like, if you're just a casual player trying to get your plus 10 done and you're a Feral Druid, the amount of groups that would invite you would be so low, because that's just how it works. Oh, someone just
No.
Tori actually. Oh, no, okay.
No. See,
Apparently not.
Torty almost knows how my mind works, because quite literally, the next FAQ question I have here for this section of the show is, are you going to try and make classic Feral DPS work? Torty goes in chat, will you guys play Feral in classic?
no. Well, I might fuck around with it, right? Like, because like it doesn't mean anything to me, right? So I might like load it up and just fuck around leveling and just bathe in the nostalgia a little bit. But I have zero intention of playing that game seriously.
Yeah,
because
I don't think
it's
I'd
just not
play it
interesting or
seriously
competitive to
either.
me.
I wouldn't play a Druid, because Druid's some huge sandbag class in Classic. I'd play a Healer Priest for sure, because I'm trying to be fought.
Okay, try hard.
Yeah, okay. If you're gonna play Classic, you definitely should not play Feral Druid. That's my opinion.
Okay, if you're playing Classic, your only choices are you either play something that's like a meme, like Enhancement or like Feral.
Hey!
Yeah.
Or...
okay, Enhancement in Classic is really bad, I'm pretty sure.
or like
Just
Ret
wait
Paladin,
until
or something
we
that's like
Yeah.
super meme, right? Something that's just
Yeah.
meme, whatever. Like it might be good or whatever, like it might be fun, but it's a fucking meme, right?
Yeah.
Or you do something and you play like a rogue and you just spend your entire time ganking people and just ruining people's
Yeah.
day. I think those are your only two options, right? Because what you can do, you're gonna raid. Man, you're not getting world first on that shit. That shit's gone. That shit's gone like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, or
Classic
Guardian Druid.
world
Guardian Druid
first.
is also super meme and doesn't
Yeah.
exist because it's called Feral Druid Orc. It's called Feral Druid.
Yeah, Guardian Druid didn't exist. Was it MOP when they added that whole Guardian thing?
Well, when you had your split. Yeah. That's actually...
'cause-
Yep.
Yeah.
What's funny about that is my final FAQ question was, do you think other classes should use or could use the Druid 4 spec treatment?
Shaman should get a
You're a
tank
shaman,
spec.
so I'm pretty sure
Shaman
you're
should get a
basing
tank
for this.
Oh,
I think, like, I honestly think we have too many. So
oh.
controversial maybe, but I think we have too many specs in the game. There aren't enough unique niches that make them different from each other, in my opinion. So I don't think adding more specs is. I mean, maybe they can come up with a cool concept. If they do, I mean, that's great. But I feel like most specs, if anything, have an issue being unique from each other as is. So I don't think adding more is necessarily what the game needs. That's just my opinion.
Okay.
I do kind of want more like random specs to play tank, because honestly, if sometimes I play ults, okay, for the most part I'm a degenerate Feral one trick.
Wow.
But sometimes I do play ults, right? And when I play ults, it's so awful. Like when I played Rogue, it's actually just so awful. You're like trying to pug a Mythic Plus or something, and you're like, I have a DPS spec, and there's like 8 million other DPS specs who want that spot that I want.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like more classes to have healer and tank specs, just so there are more classes that I can potentially play. But yeah.
I just feel like it just like adding more. So if you add like another healing spec or something, you know, the state of healer specs maybe less so, but like tank specs are, you know, there's a very strict meta of what people and guilds find. So just adding more of them just means you have more specs, probably not very appealing, you know, at the bottom of the tier chart. This is my issue kind of with DPS specs as well. Like there's so many of them, and it's impossible for all of them to be constantly in a state of balance, right? So that some of them always end up with like unique things that are stronger. And I feel like if you had less specs, right? If you design World of Warcraft 2.0, you would probably start with less specs, make sure all of them have good strengths and unique, you know, utility maybe And then, you can look at, okay, can we add a more spec? But as it is currently, we have tons of them, and a lot of them are, basically like almost all pure specs are equivalent, except, this one happens to be tuned better for this tier, so now everyone plays that one. And I feel like, is there much point like adding a fourth spec in that situation? I don't know. Seems unnecessary.
Yeah, like they already ruined survival.
Yeah, Survival Hunter. That's a spec apparently.
Survival Hunter gets its own standalone show in the BFA Junket, which is a weird.
Yeah,
back
I mean
and
it's
forth.
so different. Yeah,
it's so different, but it's also there are really good parts of it, and really bad parts of it too that we've heard the rumblings of compared to the weird nonsense that it was in Legion. But we'll get to that in the months to come. We don't know because this is like the follow up to all of this. Is that 8.2 major and minor essences? We're gonna have a major right off the bat with its minor, and then one extra minor, and then we'll get another one down the road when they let us actually get AP the matter again, because it's going to be unreachable at first. But is there anything out there that you want to caution, or that you're actually cautiously optimistic about with the essences changing up and breaking the game wide open? And I'll go with Zan. I would like your very calm answer to this, because I know Guilty is ready to go on this one.
I feel like there's plenty of these essences that are somewhat interesting to me, in that I think they could be usable, but I feel like almost all of it is gonna come down to just number tuning, and so I feel very hard saying, this one looks really cool. Like I think, for example, the Visions Perfection, or what it's called, like the one with CDI on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sure, a lot of people are hyped about that one, and I mean, I could maybe see it. Like, I understand that it looks cool to get a cooldown proc, but I personally feel like all of these could be good, and most of them probably gonna end up being pretty bad, unfortunately, and it's all gonna be down to numbers. That's my take on it, most.
Yeah. So obviously he mentioned the Visions essence, Visions of Perfection, which procs your CD. So obviously, as he mentioned, it is all down to tuning. Like, it all comes down to the numbers at the end of the day. But there is a possibility that will result in us playing Incarnation, because Incarnation isn't a bad talent, honestly. Like, it's actually a really solid talent. It's so close to having situational usages on like Jaina Part 3 and stuff like that. I know Zan has like a big champions log, because that is the most relevant fight in the battle for Dazar'alor instance, with Incarnation, where he popped the fuck off. So yeah, Incarnation, potential. One thing that's getting shouted out in the chat, and there's been so much talk about this recently, is there was some interview. I can't actually remember who it was with, and I'm sorry for whoever it was. I did enjoy reading the interview, but there's talk of a essence which will give you a fourth PvP talent slot and will allow you to use that PvP talent in PvE. That would be obviously, like I've talked about this with Zan before, and probably the most likely is that it's like Soul of the Arch Druid, where it gives you like one that's preset. In which case, it's probably going to suck, because they're not going to give us like Leader of the Pack or something. If it lets you pick Leader of the Pack, then I don't know. I'll do a cat chat entirely talking about Leader of the Pack or something.
If Leader of the Pack got introduced, I think it would be way better than Demon Hunter debuff, way better than Monk debuff. And
for context, for people that don't know, it's a 5% crit buff to the raid. That also gives you a healing proc whenever you crit.
Yeah. Whenever you crit, you heal for a certain amount.
Which would obviously make Feral mandatory in raids, which would
That's
be
bad.
interesting.
But it's good, but it's bad.
Yeah, basically what Hippo said is bad but it's good, but it's bad but it's good. It would be interesting having to watch all of these guilds suddenly get a Feral Druid. I was talking to Connor, who was in the chat earlier, from Method, and he was talking about if Leader of the Pack still existed. We said, yeah, Leader of the Pack still existed, it's 5% crit. And he just laughed and said, Jimmy's going to have to play Feral.
Oh, no.
Fragments did play Feral and lost.
So that kind of amused me, but honestly, I think the odds that we get Leader of the Pack in PvE are probably like less than 0. if Blizzard actually give us lead of the pack in PvE, then they're trolling.
Yeah,
Right.
it would be the worst timeline, but the most
The
ideal.
best timeline.
Like, it's a really bad thing, but for the Feral Druid players, it would be really good.
But see, this is the scary part of this, and I just thought of this as I was reading chat. The other Blizzard interview that came out recently, which I just I facepalmed so hard, and I have a lot of forehead to facepalm with, is that they had talked about, instead of removing the raid buffs in the game, right? The monk, demon hunter, mage, and the priest and battle shout, that kind of crap, right? Which no one likes.
Yeah,
Instead of removing them, the blue post line in the interview was that they were looking at adding more of them back or into the game. So that sort of entails with.
I mean, it's one way of doing it.
Yeah.
So, controversial opinion. I like that. I know I'm the only person in the world probably, but so I don't like raid buffs. Like baseline, I understand the arguments. It's power out gameplay and all that. I fully agree with that. But what they do and what they used to do, if you have a good spread of them, so that all classes kind of have them and specs have them, you can make a situation where it's very bad to stack one spec, which I think is really good for raid comp diversity.
Yeah,
and I think so. If you actually go all in on that, you make sure you think of, okay, so maybe, Windwalker, Enhance, and Feral has one unique thing, so you need to have at least one of those 3 specs or something like that, and you actually think this through, and you do it carefully for all specs. I think that could be fine, but I think if you do it poorly, you end up in a situation like now where you have oh yes, so fun for demon hunters, and a lot of melee is salty about the fact that 2 melee spots are always taken by whatever buff class or something like that. It's not a good situation right now, for sure.
I mean, Tattles is playing devil's advocate in a way, yeah. Is it better to have spec diversity as opposed to class diversity?
I think you want a mix of it, because obviously, there's situations where Warlocks, for the most part, Warlocks are all the specs, right? If you have Warlocks, that's great. Then all of those specs, they're pure DPS. You might have a fight where Affliction's better, you might have a fight where Demonology's better, you might have a fight where Destruction's better. That's fine. Encounter design can kind of cover that. But for some specs, some classes, you do kind of want spec diversity. For the most part, Ferals and Balance kind of fill a similar niche, except that Balance is ranged and Feral is melee. So you kind of want some spec diversity there. And the same for Enhancement versus Ellie. And then we go back to Rogues again, where it's kind of, you can do encounter design with that. So I think there's a mix of you want class design and you want class diversity and you want spec diversity. But you don't want full spec diversity and you don't want just class diversity. There's kind of a blend between the different specs. My dad's going to bed, so good night, Dad.
I like that. But that's the tough one, because obviously we talked about this when we were setting up the show, because Club Camel came up with their Mythic Unat roster compared to what Pieces and Method did. And even Methods was, for their World Second, was but then Pieces was just it's kind of but then Club Camel's hold my beer. Because they're Ret Paladins, okay, sure, why not? Right? So they proved that you don't need to do bleh to achieve high-placed rankings when bosses are super hard. Well, also true.
Fuck up, Hippo. You made it in DNO.
What do you mean?
But I feel it's not just an issue there, though. I understand that argument. And so I understand the issue at the very high end, but it isn't that big of an issue for me if you need to have, for World First, that you stack 8 of something. But it is more of an issue when you go down in the ranks and you are looking to recruit people and you don't care about diversity at all, right? So you just go, well, it's fine that we have 5 mages or whatever because they're probably always going to be decent, right? Then it bullies out, more niche specs and more hybrid specs and stuff like that, because it's much easier to just go with something which is very likely to be good. It's good to always pick up a rogue, right? It's safer. And I do think that is the real issue. I don't, at the high end, sure, as well, but I feel that's a little bit of a different issue because it affects very few people.
Yeah, it's funny to talk about, and it's interesting to see. We talked about that on Method's coverage of the Crucible of Storms Race to World First, where we saw what Method was doing, and then we get the Pieces World First, and then it's okay, so it's not as ridiculous. But then it really
Method
became
went
something
all out on that, man. They
did.
had 19 Warlocks or something, didn't they?
Okay, it wasn't 19.
Listen,
it was
all right.
Like
We all know that Scott can't play a warlock anyway, so they couldn't have 19. Gosh.
Unlucky.
Oh boy.
They had 11 or
Yeah.
12 at some point. Yeah, it was pretty nuts. But that, I mean, hey, that was what they wanted to try for that encounter. But it's interesting to see. And the feedback for the next raid coming out, Azara's Eternal Palace, is very mixed. So that one will be interesting to see.
I haven't actually looked at any of the encounters
Yeah,
yet.
I haven't looked at anything either.
I looked at some of the like boss journals of them. They look quite cool, but
outside
we'll
of
have to see when we get to
Azara.
them.
Yeah, I've heard
Yeah.
whatever the fish's name is, Blackwater Behemoth, I think. It no one likes it. Everyone's like, hey, cool design. It's not fun. Remove it from the game.
It's only the second boss, though.
I mean, yeah, but I've just it doesn't like it. You can't place things like Starfall. Not like you're
Nope.
repressing that ability. You can't place
Mhm.
Spirit Link. You can't place all
Nope.
these things. It's just like that's not fun.
Don't
I
think
guess.
you need that. That's the whole point. I think it's going to be
I
completely
guess.
You cast
scuffed.
meta.
I don't think you can.
I think you would go to the
you would
ocean
fall to the
floor.
bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, you go to the ocean floor. Then you can swim up. Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, why not? That would be fun to see. You could try to meta
Fuck
on
you,
the
Demon
water.
Hunters.
The boss is on the bottom of the area. You would just whatever. You're fine.
Yeah.
It looks totally goofy. We're gonna have stupid kill compilations of it. There's gonna be no melee involved because of the stupid frontal cone. It's fine. It's only the second boss.
It's
Who cares?
Second boss, 12 ranged, no melee.
Stop.
Oh yeah, actually, someone just said something in chat that I want to shout out for a second. Can we
Go
talk
on.
about why there aren't skips in raids anymore?
Oh,
Like this is
yeah.
not feral related at all.
I think
But what happened to them?
Blizzard actually really likes the new Game of Thrones, and they just forget about things. I think that's what happened. I think D&D have rubbed off on the Blizzard devs, and they just forgot that raids used to have skips.
Yeah, I don't.
No,
because
but,
Uldir
Kib and Fade.
could have been in a skip there.
Kib and Fade. I know that in Uldir they literally just forgot that they existed, which is baffling to me. But I've actually seen the screenshot of that, so who the fuck knows what the fuck is going on there?
Yeah, what,
Like,
I don't know what happened. How do you forget a
Wavy
skip?
hands, I don't know. But then in Battle for Dazar'alor, there's actually like a point where you could be like, this is where the skip goes. Because you've got the Alliance Horde swap, right?
Yep.
It would be so easy to have the
There's no way
skip
they
there.
forgot
But
again.
there just isn't. How, like, I could get they forgot about it in Uldir, but how did they forget again, man? Like,
Yeah, I don't.
D&D
I
got
don't-
to them.
D&D got to them.
Yep.
Yeah, imagine.
So yeah, can we have skips back? Forgot about forgetting that they forgot. Thanks.
I
Kib.
just never want to do Mechatork. Make the skip after that. That's a
Mhm.
horrible boss.
Well, the skip
Rastakhan.
would be, I think, like probably 2 Rastakhan if I had to imagine, because it would go to like
right
the
after.
penultimate middle story point, and then you'd go, yeah, which is
Well,
fine.
actually, you could do like HFC, where you've got like 2 skips. So you got the.
You could.
So you got to the.
It's
Is Opulence
would
the
be
first Horde boss?
yeah.
Yes. So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
Opulence, and then you go to Mechatork,
Yep. You could.
and then you've got like even.
I
But
said, so Ted apparently asked during his creator summit of when he attended, he said Blizzard couldn't see where to place skips in BOD, but Blizzard likes them and are going to bring them back
Okay,
at some point.
if that's true, then Blizzard are smoking some good shit because it's so obvious.
It's just right there. Like literally Rastakhan after Rastakhan, the Alliance swap right there. How can you not see that?
It's California, man, but
Okay.
ease off a little bit. Ease off for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know. That one's a little confusing. Skip to
To Jaina,
Jaina.
if only. I'd love it. But then I'd have to do Jaina.
I mean, I'm actually
yeah.
in the ballpark of, we had the Antaurus ones where there were different levels of them, because you could eventually key to skip to just Agrimar, and that was just Agrimar to Argus.
Yeah.
So there's no reason why we couldn't just have a potential skip to Jaina, right? After you do it 4 times, and you pick and choose, right? It just moves you through the raid. I mean, even Destiny has boss skips. Come on. You just skip 2 different bosses in raids. But that's a totally
Yeah,
different thing. I like the ruffles and the LMAOs in chat. That was pretty good. But we'll go around the horn here again for any closing shout outs, remarks, soapbox you may have. Zan, you're first. What you got?
Soapbox? Well, I mean, I don't know, like, kinda like, I'm kind of. I would like a good raid tier, like a fun raid tier where there isn't a lot of, annoying mechanics or like this is super bad for melee or this is super bad for range. Just a good, decent raid tier. That would be something I've been a bit missing, frankly, for a while.
I want to get a dig in there because of the new raid coming out. There's obviously a tone of every single raid of what you do. Remember back in the Tomb of Soak Garrus, that was the 7 of all the bosses and soaks. Yeah. The new hook in Ajara's Palace is boss moves chase boss.
Hey, melee can do that.
That happens on like half of the bosses.
Feral can do that.
And not
well.
like
Yeah.
you move in the raid. Like the boss leaves to another place, and you
Okay,
have to
no, that
go
sucks. Fuck
somewhere.
that.
Yeah.
I
That's
thought it was
the new
just like
theme.
you're moving the
No,
boss
no, no,
across
no, no.
the room.
Oh, there are 3 bosses specifically that you leave and go somewhere else in the encounter.
So like a Shaw of whatever that Shaw fight in Terrace of the Endless Spring was, you literally just go to another realm.
No, another realm.
Or like
You are
just-
going
Or like,
somewhere else in the boss arena.
Okay.
It's
What was the boss with the fucking bridge?
kind of
In
Oh,
Antorus.
Iminar.
That boss.
Iminar. Yeah.
Iminar. That's the baby.
It's kind of like that.
Yeah, like Iminar, I guess.
That's like
I guess.
Iminar. Yeah. But no, Zan, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I
didn't
don't
want to
like that.
interrupt, but that was the hook I wanted to give you there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like that's something that's been a bit. There's been a lot of raid tiers recently. It's just been a lot like that. I feel they've been they've had a bunch of annoying mechanics. That just feels very unrewarding. They're fine on progress, but they feel very unrewarding to farm because it's super like excessively using one-shot mechanics, for example, and it gets tiring, to be honest, to farm that stuff. And that's like my soapbox, I guess.
All right, Hippo, your turn.
You're so passionate.
It's also a place you can put shout-outs. I don't know, Zan, you do a lot of work in the community. Do you have anyone else you want to like make sure you throw out the thumbs up to that also helps out making things happen for Feral Druids?
It's like literally only
like,
Zan in Simcraft.
Yes,
No,
Zan does everything, basically.
Shout out to
No, but
himself.
I feel like there's a lot of people that like pitch ideas, and I do like that. Like I appreciate everyone who comes up with ideas. Just send like DMs if you have good idea of like things or like new stuff or essences or like combination of traits or something like cool stuff like that. So I guess a shout out to everyone who like comes up with good ideas. Like that's cool stuff. I like that.
Okay. A
Making
humble brag.
simple and viable.
Hippo, your turn. Soapbox, shout outs, what you got?
Not really anything soapboxy, but shouts out to my guild, obviously. Big fans of them. Vision, US Thrall. We got a US 8th this tier. Lost 1 rank. Only because Australians raid ungodly hours, though. Definitely not us, so we'd never do overtime. But specifically one person in Vision, the other Feral Druid, meowing in Vision. Great player, better than me at Feral. Probably one of the best Feral Druids in the game right now. Any Dream Grove people for like theory crafting. Shouts out to one balanced theory crafter only, Goosey, good friend. That's it though. None of the other balanced druids deserve any shouts out.
Are you allowed to? So, are we gonna let this go before you? Your ceiling? Is this a thing?
Oh, okay. That's none of that. Okay, I don't know why people always link me this picture. It's not of my ceiling. It's just a random ceiling, and it's really dirty. And they always ask me if this is my room. I don't know why. Here, you want me to actually show my ceiling? Nothing's going on up there. It's just a ceiling fan, white, whatever. Okay, it's all fine. Also have my hippos back there. They're stuffed hippos.
Heck yeah.
Don't know if you could see those.
I was gonna go.
He took it down.
There, he's
apparently
back.
guilty crashed, but he's back now. So.
Oh, you're muted though.
What's up? He's muted. Oh no. His PC crashed and he's muted.
Change your audio
Wait,
input
hello?
device.
Am I
There
back?
you go. There you go. There you are.
What
There
do
we
you
go.
mean?
Okay.
It's
So
in
the
the
deal is,
corner.
I use a noise blocker.
Yeah.
So when my PC crashes, if my noise blocker doesn't boot up first, then I just don't get any audio. But yeah, shout out to my PC for crashing mid-show. That's big shit. That's good shit.
It's your turn.
Assuming
though.
Hippo's finished. Is it
Yes,
actually
yes,
my turn?
yes,
Okay,
it's your turn.
cool.
Your turn.
I even I pandered with his stupid ceiling thing. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, you actually, oh my god, man. He's been trying the entire show to get that on. God
Yep.
fucking damn it.
All right.
Yeah. So like I'll do shoutouts and then I'll soapbox because I want to rant about gear for a little bit because gear sucks in this expansion.
Well, you have 60 seconds.
So yeah, 6 seconds, right. Shout out to fucking Falco because he keeps spamming me to fucking rant about him. We did like a 5 druid fucking Mythic Plus. Shout out to Zeth in the chat, who got me into whatever. Like, I'm so grateful for it. And then he fucking quit on me. And now I have this shitty job of being GM. So shout out to that. Thank you, Zeth. I love you really. And obviously shout out to my dad for like watching this, even though he knows nothing about WoW. So that's pretty fucking cool. Gear sucks in this expansion, right? Trinkets are boring. Like gear is RNG. Like Titan forging sucks. Sockets are just overpowered and boring.
Yep.
Can we just have like fun gear back? Like I want mop, I want wad. When like trinkets were kind of fun. When like I didn't have to worry about whether this shit Titan forges or whatever. Like, just something fun. Like I enjoyed gear. I know some people didn't, but I would just like gear to be more enjoyable than it is now. Because honestly, I kind of don't care about farm because gear means so little to me now. Like I don't care if I get this big pog piece or whatever.
Yep.
It's just whatever. And I know Zan does care about gear because he spent the entire raid, like he literally didn't get a weapon until we were in Crucible of Storms. Like the entire, he like eventually got a Mythic Plus weapon, but he literally only got a Mythic weapon when we started progressing Crucible of Storms. So yeah, and shout out to Zan as well because honestly, I don't know how much people know about how much Zan does, but Zan does a metric shit ton of stuff for Feral, and a load of it is in the back of the scenes. He's so frequently working on stuff, and like I'll message him to play League or something, and he'll be working on some APL stuff. Like he does so much, and I don't know how much people appreciate it or how much people know about it, but I just can't stress enough like how much stuff Zan does for the Feral community, and that's like awesome.
Yeah, not to take away,
Like,
but
his own time.
I want to share the shout out because I'm in the Shaman Discord. It's a separate Discord that does a lot of the APLs for many of the different specs. So there's like Havoc Demon Hunter that goes along there. There's the Enhanced Shaman one. So I know the guys that do these giant copy pastas and figure all this crap out. So if you're doing all that by yourself, there's a team. Like 3 or 4 people that do this for
like,
other specs.
He's unhuman. He's a fucking genius.
The Feral
and, like,
APO is actually like more complicated than like say the Havoc APO.
I would sure, yeah.
And he just does everything. So
that's awesome.
Big shouts out on Zan.
Can we get Zan on cam next year so when they gush about it, we can see his face? Because he's just a cat.
Maybe one day. But yeah. I just can't stress enough how much Zan does and like how grateful all Ferals should be for just like the amount of shit he does. So
there you go.
Yeah, shout out to all those other people. Big shout out to Zan, Fixed Gearing, and thanks for having us on. Like it's always a lot of fun when we come on here. It's good banter. I get to meme around for like an hour or two and like
Yep. Yeah. Well, it doesn't end here, but I'm going to hit this button for this part of the show that does end here. So thank you very much for tuning in to episode number 189 of Final Boss TV for Feral Druids, which the cat is for FITE. But we have a little bit of break. I'll have a week-ish off. I'll let you guys know on Twitter and stuff because I'm upgrading my system and computer and audio gear and all those other madness to control all this and moving rooms in my house. Plenty of time to take off for that. But I know I have Shadow Priests and Resto Druids, which I guess Torty is going to be one of them in the wings that I'll set up for the next couple of shows. He has to come on and defend himself, I guess. But back around, there's Zan. You can go hit him up and give him those suggestions in Discord at Xanzara. Sir, thank you for being on the show again. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having us.
There's Hippo. You can go follow him on Twitch at Hippos Are Neat. And you can ask him about his ceiling.
Yeah, okay. I can't believe you actually brought that up because the entire chat started spamming and I was like, I wonder if he'll mention it.
The very end, I gotta leave it. Leave it right there for him. And then there's Guilty. Thank you for coming back on the show, sir, and helping me out with putting this all together. So Guiltyas, Feral. Is it Guilty as Feral or Guilty as? I always asked you that if your name is all one
I don't know, man. Like, I think it's Guilty as, but people just call me Guilty.
Exactly.
Like, at some point, I'd change to Guilty, but I think it's taken on my servers, so I'm just stuck with this name. But yeah.
There you go.
Call me whatever you want. I don't care. Like, it's chill.
That sounds good to me. Remember, if you missed any of the live show, of course, all gets archived on the YouTube channel. Links down below. But make sure you don't subscribe to my channel. That's the whole point. And my YouTube is slowly dying. So, sure, why not? Not a big deal. But next week off. Keep keep you guys updated, and then we'll go from there. So have a great one. We'll see you next week, or not. And then, wait, that's the wrong button. Bye. Wave. Zan can't wave. Wait, bye. That's what.
Zan can't wave. He's waving in spirit.
Is he?
It's waving in
I'm
spirit, man. I
waving.
promise you.
I'm
Yeah.
waving.
Waving. Yeah.
I like it.